We can stop like at any point.
No, I don't like it. I don't mind talking about it. It's not. I mean, it's something like. It took me a while to get past it, but let's put some context in there. I think as far as like personal experience goes, it's probably one of the most like horrific things that ever happened to me physically, and then probably mentally as well. Is that when like we'd gone on holiday to Turkey like a couple of years ago, I'd met up with a few people that work in the hotel. So obviously it was like secluded like island sort of thing. So everyone knew everybody, and it just like I felt content there because they worked at the hotel as well, and they'd always been like really friendly, and then like we chatted during the day. So I didn't have a problem like obviously going out with them at night time. So it was kind of, I asked my mum that like if it'd be alright if I went, because I was kind of like sceptical about it, just like obviously from the way I've been brought up. And my mum was like, oh yeah, no, that's fine, like if you feel okay about it and you want to go, then go. So I was like, okay. So like we'd gone out and we'd had a drink in this one bar, but I was only drinking water at this point because not really much of a big drinker anyway. So I just didn't really think about it. And then like they invited me up to this club. I don't know, we had to go up some stairs outside to get to it. And I remember like the guy buying me a few drinks, but like, the one thing I remember most about it was him constantly telling me to stir my drink, which I just thought was so strange for like a vodka lemonade or whatever I was drinking, and it just, I don't know, it was really weird. And then like it got to like later on at night then, and I was starting to feel quite woozy and like sick, which I thought was quite strange because I'd only had like 2 drinks apart from like my water. But then it just got to the point where I couldn't really walk without anybody's help, and I've never been that drunk in my life, so I couldn't believe it. I was like, after 2 drinks, like wondered what I'd had to drink. And I remember like walking like down the stairs with him, and like he was like helping me walk, and then we ended up on this boat. It kind of like, the memories kind of like, they come in flashes, and they go kind of like come and go, because obviously I was like out of it for a period of time as well. And I remember going on the top deck of the boat and sitting down, but like things in between are kind of like a blur. The only thing I really remember after that is kind of, it's almost as if I was asleep, and then somebody was like waking me up, and I just remember being sick, but then he was also on top of me, and I told him to stop, but he wouldn't, and I tried to like push him away, but obviously I could barely move, so like nothing seemed to like stop him or whatever. And it was almost like I kept blacking out then as well, and then like I'd wake up and he'd still be on top of me, and it's just trying to tell like somebody to stop, and then trying to like will yourself like the power to make him stop. And when he eventually like stopped and got off me, he was just kind of, it was really strange, because he even helped me get dressed, and I don't even remember taking my clothes off or like anything like that at all. And then getting off the boat, he even helped me off the boat, and I remember walking back towards the hotel, because obviously they didn't live like in there, they lived further over on the island, and I had like no idea what time it was, but I didn't even have like my bra on, because I was holding it in my hand, and I was just walking trying to find my mum and like my way back to like the room. And as I kind of like stumbled like towards, I'm not sure like if they were like palm trees and like some bushes, I saw my mum, and I remember just walking up to me and like grabbing me, and she was like, Tatum, are you okay? Like, you okay? And I was like, I think I'm gonna be sick. So, and then she'd asked about my bra being in my hand as we were like making my way back to the room, and I couldn't tell her what had happened, because I I didn't really know like what I was seeing for sure, like if it was all in my head or if I was just like losing my mind. I generally had like no idea. And when I'd got back to the room, I ran for the bathroom. I could like barely walk, so I'd like kind of like slipped as I went on like the tile floor, and like kind of cut my knee open, and like I just ran to the toilet, and I was just sick. And my brother and my dad were in the room as well, so they were like asleep. My dad kind of like was semi-conscious like of me being there, and then I had like white linen trousers on, so my mum, she noticed the blood on my leg, and then she noticed I was like bleeding from like downstairs as well, so she just started like all these questions at me, and it was just I didn't know what was happening, and I got like she helped me get changed into like she changed from my trousers then into like my pajamas, but like before that there was a doctor there. I think she called like hotel security or reception and asked for a doctor to come, and I just remembering being there and kind of like saying things that I couldn't fully understand, and then I remember getting changed and being escorted outside into an ambulance and then taken to the hospital. And like the entire time we were in like the back of the ambulance, I couldn't tell you who was there or where we were going. I didn't know what was happening, and like I kept like, I remember like screaming like 'cause I was in like so much pain, or like I felt like I was going to be sick constantly, and my stomach was like churning, and by the time we got to the hospital I just like poked and prodded with like so many needles. I had like a massive bruise like on my vein where they'd like taken like blood from me and then couldn't get it from there, so I'd done it on the palm of like the back of my hand sort of thing. And I was kind of like, they let me sleep then on and off, but I remember waking up and my mum being there, and she just kind of looked at me and she just said that she was so sorry and that like she'd let me go, and I didn't know what to say to her, because I was like, kind of felt that like she brought me up better than that, like I should have known that something was wrong, that it wasn't what I thought it was, and like really naive of me to think that way. And like I told her that she had nothing to be sorry for, it was me that I should have known better and all this kind of thing. But it got to the point where I needed the toilet and they wouldn't let me go because DNA testing needed to be done, and they said that if like I'd like wiped it away or anything, then a case could be lost, because like I'm not sure what the police is called in Turkey, if it's like the Grazia or whatever, but they were there, and I don't know, there was this one nurse who spoke English, and even then she wasn't there all the time, so it was just really hard to like translate. I mean, it's bad enough if something like that happens in this country, but then there being like the language barriers where it just became so hard for us to like understand what was happening, or for my mum to get across what was being done, what was being tested for, and everything else. But I remember her, like one of the nurses coming in to see me, and she was talking to me in like Turkish, I presume, but I had no idea what she was saying, and she just kept going at me. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying, and she got so frustrated and left. And the other nurse, like the English speaking nurse, came back, and she like obviously told me what the nurse had said, and it was the police wanted to know if I wanted to press charges or not, or if I just wanted to like let it go. And like the thought occurred to me, like, as if to say, well, why would I let it go? Somebody's obviously, like, he's done something to me that I didn't want to happen. was like a complete violation of like who I thought I was, and they just seemed so casual and like coy about it, like it was nothing, like a regular thing. And it, like, my mum was like, yes, she wants to press charges, and like the nurse like kind of snapped at my mum, was like, well, that's not your decision to make, that has to be hers. And it was just kind of like, I didn't want him doing what he did to me to do to somebody else, which is why I sat there and I said that, you know, I would press charges. So then they took me to another room where I was isolated from everybody else, and I wasn't allowed to speak to my mum. I had to sit there and be questioned by a doctor and a nurse, and they asked me all these technical questions about like my sexual relations beforehand and like previous experience, and it was, I felt like I was on trial almost, like for just being me. And then like obviously the DNA test was done, and I had to go and sit back outside then, and my mum was waiting for me, and we had a woman come from the embassy, and she just kept apologising for what had happened, saying that I'm so sorry it happened to you, and yeah, but at least now he won't be able to do it to anyone else because you're taking this action, you're doing this. And it all just kind of like flew over my head, because we were then taken from there and we were stuck in the back of a police car, and we had to go to, I think they called it the district attorney's office, and we had to go there, and my mum wasn't allowed in the room. I literally walked in and I had to wait like almost an hour for a translator to come because none of them spoke English. And I remember sitting down, and one of the first things they said to me was, if we find out you're lying, you'll be in prison for up to 20 years. I just thought, why would I lie about it? It's almost as if I was in the wrong. And like obviously I can't compare it to anything that's happened in Britain, but over there it was horrendous. I literally felt on trial for something I hadn't done, for something bad that had happened to me. And then when they'd finished asking me all these questions and details and all these like other little things, they let me go. And I remember walking out of the room, and as I walked, they needed a copy of my passport, or they'd already taken it and I needed to get it back. And as I was walking past you, there was like this long corridor, and it was all kind of like a desk sort of thing, like a reception desk, and the door was here, and the door we came out was here, and as I literally just walked past, they were bringing him in, like through the doorway as I'd just gone past it. And like obviously because you don't know who's coming, you turn and look, and he was just there like saying he was so sorry, and like they were just like escorting him into the room. And like I just felt so sick at that point. I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And then having like that experience was just like, I thought that was like the worst of it. But coming back to the hotel was pretty much just as bad, because I felt like everybody knew what happened, because he obviously worked there, and they were obviously like a close-knit like kind of community sort of thing. So I was so self-conscious the entire time I was there. We only stayed for the extra day because my mum arranged everything so that we'd go home earlier. And I had like physical bruises on my body and on like my boobs, and like just all on my arms, and like one on my neck, and it literally looked like someone had just like beat me up from like the waist upwards. And I remember we'd planned a horse riding trip for the day after, or like the day I came from the hospital, but obviously me and my mum couldn't go. But my mum told my dad that he needed to take my little brother Jack, because he he shouldn't know there was anything wrong. He still needed to think that it was okay and that it wasn't the time to tell him. Or so I just felt even worse then. I know that I'd kind of ruined that for him as well, but he had a good time with my dad, so it wasn't too bad. But I remember the night time I didn't want to go up to the eating area and eat, or go outside of the room basically. And I remember it getting so hot in the room at about 7:30, after literally not long after my mum and dad had left, and I kind of just stepped outside onto the balcony area to get some fresh air. And from where our room was, you could see kind of this little road that ran through the hotel for their little buggies and things like that to drive down. And I looked across and I saw the head of the hotel, the security guy, and the one who'd attacked me, which I didn't think I'd see him again after it happened. But then when he went, obviously to give his statement about what he said had happened in comparison to what I'd said, I thought that would definitely be the last time I'd see him. And seeing him there just threw me back. I ran into the hotel room and I locked myself in the bathroom. I know it probably wasn't didn't seem like much, but to me it made me feel a lot safer. And I generally didn't know what to do. And I sat in there until my mum, dad and Jack came back from having food. And even my mum said that she couldn't believe they let him back on the grounds. But it was just one of the things. And after we left Turkey, that was the end of it really. I remember we flew from Cardiff originally, but we had to fly back to Doncaster, I think, because we couldn't get a flight to Cardiff. And I think the hardest part for me, even though it was horrible what happened, seeing what it did to my mum and my dad was, I think, even harder, because every time my mum brought it up, she'd cry. She couldn't stop herself. She didn't know what to say or what to do to make it any better for me. And the fact that when she had to call my sister and tell her what happened.
Oh, you just ruined.
God, man.